Oh, the New York Mets. What a situation we find ourselves in again, having to talk about the New York Mets and just how I don't feel comfortable in their current situation. I don't know what their plan is this offseason other than just signing every Yankee free agent that's ever happened. And while that is very funny, I will admit, I don't know if they're building a very good baseball team, and I just kind of wanted to talk about it. I'm not saying that the Mets are a bad team or anything like that, but I do think that they're the third best team in the division by a lot, honestly. I don't even think it's close. The Atlanta Braves are going to take a major step forward after their step backwards last year, and their roster is probably my favorite in the entire league that's not the Los Angeles Dodgers, and the Philadelphia Phillies are still going to be the Philadelphia Phillies. So the New York Mets are sitting in third place in my opinion. I don't really know what they're doing. Their rotation is a little concerning, and the rumors surrounding it are more concerning, with it recently being reported that they're more likely to focus on starting pitching next offseason because of the incredible free agency class. But what does that mean for this year? Their rotation isn't terrible, but it's extremely young, and they might have 3 rookies in it this season. I did not like the Marcus Semien for Brandon Nimmo trade. I'll get into it a little bit later, but it just doesn't make a ton of sense to me, and signing Jorge Polanco and not bringing back Pete Alonso makes even less sense. What are the future plans at first base for the Mets? Mets fans, let me know. Is there a prospect that I'm missing? Is there something else that I'm missing? I just don't really get it, because next year's first base free agency options are Max Muncy, who doesn't even play first, and Alec Boehm, who also doesn't play first base. I know that they both can, but that's not the positions that either of those guys play. Maybe they sign Cody Bellinger and put him at first? I don't know. By the way, I kind of answered my own question later in the video, so you don't really have to comment it. I'll get more into it in a little bit. I also already mentioned this, but it's weird that they sign every single Yankee now, even though it works kind of well, but still, it's just strange. Devin Williams and Luke Weaver replacing Edwin Díaz is, it's okay. It's not really the end of the world. Those are 2 good relief pitchers in my opinion, but Edwin Díaz is one of the best closers in baseball, if not the best. And losing Edwin Díaz to the Dodgers for basically the same money is concerning to me, and it just kind of screams to what the vibes are inside of this New York Mets clubhouse. I feel like 2 years ago in 2024, when the Mets were in the NLCS, they were there solely because of vibes. Jose Iglesias put the team on his back, not because of his baseball ability, but because of his songwriting ability, and that's the reality of the situation. So Edwin Díaz choosing to leave the Mets is a big concern to me, because that means that the vibes are not really where you would want them to be. It kind of just feels like Steve Cohen has been a little bit afraid of major free agent contracts. Apart from Juan Soto, who have they really signed recently? Like, they signed Frankie Montas and Sean Manaea and guys like that, but those aren't big contracts. They paid Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander their contracts with massive yearly incentives, but they weren't long-term, and apart from Juan Soto, they really haven't given out long-term contracts. It's a really interesting place they're currently in, and I'm really not a fan of anyone on this offense besides, of course, Francisco Lindor and Juan Soto. It's impossible to not be a fan of those 2 players on the field. They are 2 of the best players in baseball. But the other 7 starters, I don't know about them. Mark Vientos scares me a lot. He only hits the ball hard. That is the only thing that he does well as a Major League Baseball player. It's obviously important, but he's not making enough contact for that hard hit rate to even matter. He's very slow, he can't field, and like I said, he strikes out way too much to even value that hard hit rate. He also doesn't walk. He doesn't take his walks. He doesn't do anything. The underlying stats were very bad in 2025, and they were just as bad in 2024, where he was actually good. He was an obvious fall-off candidate coming into the 2025 season, and that's exactly what he did. He fell off a cliff. And now that I'm thinking about it, Vientos will probably be the first baseman of the future, which is not good because they just had Pete Alonso there and they didn't make the playoffs with him and Edwin Díaz. I'm assuming that the future for the Mets is Brett Baty at third base, Francisco Lindor at shortstop, Marcus Semien at second base, and Mark Vientos at first base. This year, I think Jorge Polanco will mainly be the DH. I don't hate that signing by the Mets, but $20 million, I feel like you could have gone out and got a better player, or just paid $10 million more for Pete Alonso, who was significantly better, but what do I know? I guess that makes slightly more sense than not having any first baseman ever, but again, Pete Alonso was your second best hitter on the team, and he's gone, and you replaced him with Jorge Polanco. It just doesn't feel right. Brett Baty, I'm a little bit less afraid of. I think he's better than Mark Vientos, in my opinion, at least for future value. It took until his 4th year in MLB until he finally found some success, and that was this season, but he was pretty good. He doesn't chase, he has huge bat speed, and he hits the ball hard. Like Vientos, he still has a whiff and strikeout problem though. But again, if he's taking his walks and playing somewhat okay defense, I'm more willing to accept that than Mark Vientos, who doesn't get on base and doesn't play good defense. Brett Baty is a top 5 player on this offense though, and I don't know if that's good. I don't think you want him being top 5. I think you want him being the 8th or 9th guy in a lineup. Francisco Alvarez is a solid catcher. I can't really complain about him, but I don't really know if he's a needle mover type player. They were way better when he was playing. I think that was 2024, where they were like ridiculous when he was playing and really bad when he wasn't playing. That was kind of weird, but apart from that, he's a terrible defender, and again, he strikes out a little bit too much. This seems to be the trend in New York. It's the trend with the Yankees too. Everyone they have strikes out too much as well. But he hits a lot of home runs, and he's a good catcher. He's definitely like a 12 to 14 range catcher, so can't really complain about him. Marcus Semien is the new second baseman, and he makes his contact, but he's lost all of his power. He's kind of the opposite of the last 3 guys that we talked about, where he's very good defensively. He actually won a Gold Glove last year, and that helps him out a lot, but he doesn't have power anymore. He's had less than a 700 OPS in each of his last 2 seasons, and that's just very bad for a player of his caliber. Finishing out the infield is Francisco Lindor, and of course he's a superstar. I don't need to get into him, nothing to complain about with him at all, except there was some off-field stuff with him potentially last year, and a potential trade rumor this offseason, which is very concerning to me. And Juan Soto as well, just a top 5 player in baseball realistically, but the defense, it's terrible. The rest of the outfield, apart from Juan Soto, however, is just so bad. Jeff McNeil isn't even an outfielder. He's a second baseman that they have to play in left field because they don't have anyone else. They also want to ship him off for basically nothing because they don't want to pay him. So I don't even need to get into the stats to explain why he's bad. The Mets are telling you he's bad because they don't want him. Tyrone Taylor is a nothing player in my opinion. Maybe one of the most nothing players in all of baseball. I don't understand why he's played 2 seasons with a team that has a payroll as high as the New York Mets. The Mets really need to trade for an outfielder or sign one. Cody Bellinger would be a perfect option for them. I know, I already said that they take too many Yankees, but this is a Yankee that they should actually take. Putting him in center field or left field would really help out this team a lot. A trade for Jarren Duran from the Red Sox I also think makes a lot of sense. Give the team a little bit of speed, which they are desperately lacking right now in my opinion, even though Juan Soto stole 40 bases last year somehow. Either way, they need an outfielder, and preferably a left-handed one in my opinion, but I don't know. The guys that they have right now are a concern to me. Carson Bench, however, one of their top prospects, he's an awesome player. Benj is one of those prospects that really could turn into a true 5-tool talent. He could be like a Corbin Carroll with a little bit less speed in my opinion. He's very talented. He's a very exciting prospect, even though he struggled a little bit when he went up to AAA last year, but I'm not worried about that. He's only 22 and he has plenty of time to develop. Especially the power, he needs a little bit more power to become like a true 5-tool player in my opinion. But again, he's 22, so he has plenty of time to develop that power. They have another top prospect bat as well in Jet Williams. He's another player that's very good. I think if Jarren Duran is traded, Jet Williams makes a lot of sense to be the return. So I don't know if he's actually going to be on this team, but he's really good. He's another player that could kind of be a 5-tool-ish player, but his tools aren't as good as someone like Carson Benj, and he also struggled in AAA last year. But like Benj, he's also only 22, so I'm not concerned about this whatsoever. Jet and Benj will definitely have a big opportunity in spring training to win outfielder jobs for the Mets. I'm sure they want Carson Benj to win the center field job right now as things stand, and I'd assume that they want Jet to win the left field job, even though he's more of an infielder. With that being said though, you can't rely on two prospects like that to come up and immediately be impact players, because the Mets need impact bats on this lineup. And with that being said, the Mets are still 4th in MLB in projected payroll. Actually, they're 3rd in projected payroll, they're 4th in actual payroll with guaranteed contracts. But with the arbitration numbers, they're projected to be 3rd in payroll. That's just insane. They're projected to be over $300 million, and like I said, they don't have a ton of stars on this team. Outside of Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor, who else are you calling a star? Where else is this $300 million going? No one else is that good. They aren't really paying any starting pitchers, which on every team is the most money every single year. Sean Manaea is making the most at $22 million, which I guess isn't nothing, but it's not a lot for a starting pitcher whatsoever. I mean, Dustin May just made $13 million, and that guy is so bad at baseball. So for their biggest pitcher to be making $22 million, it's a little crazy. I just think back to how they had Jacob deGrom and they let him go, and now they're not really paying any pitchers. If you had just combined Sean Manaea and Frankie Montas's contracts, you could have Jacob deGrom for the same amount of money. This is where I'm worried about the Mets. It feels like they aren't necessarily going big free agent hunting, but they're trying to get guys that a team like Tampa would get. And that doesn't make a lot of sense to me, considering they are willing to pay a ton of money. And they do. But again, it's just not to the right players. Soto is obviously eating a ridiculous amount of the money with $51 million per season, and because of that, they haven't really been able to invest super highly into the bullpen, even though they kind of overpaid on Luke Weaver and Devin Williams in my opinion, but whatever, they're talented pitchers. I understand overpaying a little bit for a guy like that. However, when we look at 2027, they're 2nd in projected payroll as well, but other teams of course are going to pay more money as we get closer to that free agency and stuff like that. But it's still something to note that just because the team isn't that good and they have a ton of rookies potentially, they still don't have a ton of flexibility in terms of luxury tax, which again, that's crazy to me because they don't have stars. However, next offseason, like I mentioned earlier, and the Mets know because they mentioned it as well, the free agent starting pitching class is ridiculous. Tarek Skubal, Freddie Peralta, Brandon Woodruff, Kevin Gausman, Chris Sale, Jesus Luzardo, Sandy Alcantara. Which ones of these guys are they going to go and get? Are they going to get one of these guys, none of these guys, maybe even multiple of them? It's something to look for the future because they really need to pay an ace in my opinion. And for me, I just wonder here if the most logical path is to trade for a bat with a guy like Jonah Tong or Brandon Sproat. They have a lot of pitching prospects and they're good, but I just don't know how many you can have and really start, especially if you're going to go out and get a Skubal, which I think they'll be very in on. But if you're waiting until next season in 2027, aren't you kind of just throwing $300 million to a developmental year? It doesn't make any sense to me. I just don't get it. This team just makes no sense. I don't understand what I'm looking at. It makes no sense. It really doesn't. And I know that their GM is a very good and respected GM, but again, it feels like he doesn't know what he's doing right now, and that confuses me a lot. They should just sign Cody Bellinger, and then at least they have a fighting chance to have a competitive team. But without him, I don't think that they do. One thing that I don't hate about the Mets right now is the rotation, even though I was just talking about their true need for an ace, which is still true, but they have a lot of guys that could be 2 through 5, and that's never a bad thing to have. Nolan McLean is actually disgusting. He had almost a 2 WAR on Baseball Reference in just 8 starts last year, his first 8 starts in MLB. He had a 2.06 ERA, and all of his pitches are elite. He has a crazy strikeout rate and ground ball percentage, and he's just somebody that's probably going to be a 1 or a 2, hopefully, for the Mets for the future. Jonah Tong is interesting, even though he struggled last season, but in my opinion, he still has a lot of potential. I think he's probably going to get traded for a bat, like I said though. I'm higher on Kodai Senga than I feel most others are right now. It feels like he's been written off for some reason, but I don't really get that because he's been nasty every time he's pitched in MLB. Last season, he was insane until he got injured and then he came back and wasn't as good, but that doesn't concern me for the future unless the injury pops back up. David Peterson has put together back-to-back really solid starting seasons as a starting pitcher. Clay Holmes isn't too bad either as a back-of-the-rotation starter, but it's not someone that moves the needle in my opinion. Brandon Sproat is good depth, but again, like Jonah Tong, I'm not sure if he's going to be traded or not, but again, he's another really good pitching prospect, and Sean Manaea should go back to the bullpen in my opinion because they have a lot of depth, and Sean Manaea was really good as a long reliever in 2024. I would move him back there. I think he's more comfortable there. I think it makes more sense to have him there. Overall, I think that this is a really solid rotation, but getting them that ace that I've mentioned time and time again because it's just so important would make the rotation very good. They need a Skubal or a Peralta. They could trade for it this year, or they could wait for it next year, I guess, and throw this season away. But again, doesn't make a ton of sense to me when you're paying $300 million for a payroll. But the ace is what sets them apart from being a meh team to no, this is a pretty contender team, in my opinion. But I don't know. There's a weird feeling about this team right now, and I don't like it. I feel uncomfortable about the future for it, the vibes are bad, and letting Pete Alonso and Edwin Díaz walk is strange. I just feel uncomfortable. I don't like what they're building right now, and I don't like the direction that they're going in. The pieces are kind of there, but it doesn't feel like they're gonna get the star power to address the pieces, which again, it's hard to say that after they signed Juan Soto last season, but they just haven't really made much of an effort this offseason. I don't like it. I don't get it. Anyway, thank you for watching. Let me know if you think I disagree with my analysis of the Mets. I'm very interested to hear what other people think because again, I'm just confused. So if you understand what's happening, I would love to hear your take. Consider subscribing. Thank you.